American soccer fans, welcome to episode 143 of the USA Soccer Cast. We are bringing you everything about the U.S. national teams, the players, the leagues, and everything else that impacts the game of soccer in these United States. I'm Donald Wine. We are done with the men's international window for the month of October, and it was the first window with head coach Mauricio Pochettino in charge. We're going to review what happened to the United States men's national team. And then, of course, look forward to November. It's CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinals. The United States finally have an opponent. We will talk about that after the break. But first, let's get into what happened during the October window for the United States. 2 games, one against Panama, one on the road at Mexico, which concluded last night, actually this morning as we record on Wednesday, October 16th. First off, Panama. Game last Saturday in Austin. The first game with Mauricio Pochettino on the sidelines. And while it was a battle, and of course, Panama never likes to make it easy for the United States. It's always kind of chippy. The United States end up winning 2-0. Goals by Yunus Musa and Ricardo Pepi, both coming in the second half. Ricardo Pepi's goal kind of coming right on the verge of the end of the match. And in that game, it felt like the team was not necessarily easing into the flow, but they were trying to figure out how they're going to play together under Pochettino's new style and kind of using the time to incorporate some new things. We had some guys in different positions, having different roles, and for the most part, it worked. And you could see the vision there. And while the match wasn't the most free-flowing of matches and it wasn't easy for the United States, they ended up getting the victory. And a 2-0 victory against Panama in Austin is a good thing. And of course, we had lost to Panama the last 2 times we had played them, of course, in Copa America and then in the 2023 Gold Cup semifinals. But this time around, it was about establishing what this team was going to look like in this new era as we move forward, getting into the last couple of years before the 2026 World Cup. Now, the thing about that game is we could talk about that game, but really the Mexico game is the one that everyone wants to talk about. And so we're going to focus on that. But between the matches, there were a lot of changes to the core and to the roster. Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Ricardo Pepi, Marlon Fossey, and Zach Steffen all sent back to their clubs between matches. Christian Pulisic was due to load management. The guy has been all over the place and has been playing a lot. So Mauricio Pochettino said, go back and get some rest. The other guys had some injury scares, and Weston McKennie, who did not play against Panama, was apparently healthy enough that if it was a major competition, that he'd be able to play. But he was injured enough that in these games, it didn't make sense to play him, and Pochettino was not going to risk him. So he sent him home. Of course, Zach Steffen, who was called into camp for the first time in quite a while, he did not appear in the game against Panama, and then is also sent back because he too had a knock. Ricardo Pepi scored against Austin. I feel like every single time he's played in Austin, he's scored, which is amazing and great for him. But I think that he may have picked up something while playing. And again, the decision was to send him back home. And so we were down to 20 players when we went to Mexico last night in Guadalajara. And of course, you probably watched it. And if you didn't, it's a good thing you didn't, because it was a bad deal. 2-0 Mexico over the United States. The first loss to Mexico since September 2019, which snaps a 7-game unbeaten streak. It's the first loss to Mexico in Mexico since a World Cup qualifier in August 2009. Now, granted, the United States have only won to Mexico one time ever, that match coming in August 2012, but they hadn't lost since August 2009 in Mexico. That streak over. And of course, it is the first loss for Pochettino as head coach. That match, very disjointed. It felt like there was a lot of things going wrong and they just couldn't all put it together. Mark McKenzie was supposed to start last night, but he was pulled after suffering an injury during warmups. And you didn't really know that until we saw Miles Robinson on the field and kind of went, where's Mark? I don't know. Hopefully he's okay. But I also don't know if that contributed to the disjointedness that was really palpable on the side of the United States. 2 goals in the first half by Mexico, one an incredible free kick by Raul Jimenez. They see the end of the Andres Guardado era. He subs off after 18 minutes in his final match for El Tri. And despite all that, it felt like the United States just was not there. They just were not present. They weren't fighting. They weren't playing as well as they did against Panama. Now, again, you could count on the injuries, namely the guys that I mentioned that went home between camps. There was also Falarin Balogun, Tim Weah, and Johnny Cardoso, who were withdrawn from camp before they even arrived because of injury concerns. That's not counting Gio Reyna. That's not counting Tyler Adams and the scores of other players who were so hurt they couldn't even make it into camp. But injuries are one thing, and injuries can be used as an excuse of one kind. But when it comes to the how you play against Mexico, the drive has to be there, the desire has to be there, the fight has to be there, and that wasn't last night. And it's interesting to note, at least in my mind, that the United States this year in 2024 have won 4 matches, and all 4 of them have been in Texas. 3 matches at Jerry World, that's the 2 in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinal and final, and then the opener of Copa America against Bolivia, and then that match in Austin on Saturday night where they beat Panama. Everything else has been a draw or a loss. And of course, I'm not saying to put all the games in Texas, but I am saying that there is something that is noticeably off about our team, and it has been increasingly so over the last few months. And despite the fact that we beat Panama on Saturday, the glaring black eye from this camp has to be the performance that they put up against Mexico in Guadalajara. Again, it's tough to play in Mexico. It's very tough for the United States to win on the road in general, but especially in Mexico. But that doesn't excuse the fact that it didn't feel like they were really in that game once Jimenez scored that goal. And even before that, Mexico was pushing the whole game. They clearly wanted to win to right the ship in their mind and reverse the curse that they've had over the last 5 years against the United States. The United States was not willing or ready, it felt like, to meet that energy. And that's what's most concerning about this as we enter the next month. Now, I got a couple questions from some of my friends, and we've been, as you all out there have, been talking about this all day and talking about just the camp and the state of the team and the depth concerns. And there's a lot of questions that we can answer. We'll save some of them for later in future podcasts. But my friend Jonathan Slate, who also is one of my co-hosts on the World of CONCACAF podcast, he asked simply, how screwed are we? And I don't know the answer to that question because it's hard to decipher what this player pool is like. Now, we have been trained to think that this generation that we have of players is a golden generation, that we're wasting talent by letting them fester under Greg Berhalter or anybody else. And now that Pochettino's in charge, the hope was that that was going to magically turn itself around, but that player pool still exists. And despite the fact that we have some incredibly talented players, some, in my mind, world-class players, it doesn't matter if they can't get on the field. It doesn't matter if they're injured all the time. And it doesn't matter if they're not performing with their club or not even getting the chance to showcase themselves with their club to get the minutes necessary to improve as a player, to develop as a player, and to translate that to the international level. We're not seeing that. We're seeing a couple guys who are starring for their teams, but the big push has been to get guys on big teams in Europe, and a lot of them get there and they don't play. And the guys who are seeing the field may be seeing spot duty. They're being recruited over in the sense that guys are going out, clubs are going out and getting new players to come in and replace them. We have some players who were struggling to be registered with their own club to even be on the roster and get a number. Wes McKinney didn't have a locker with Juventus. And it's easy to say that it was the coaching that led to this, but the players are also not getting it done on the field. And we're seeing that. And there's a lot of answers as to why that could be. But the biggest one is they would know that the effort's just not been there. And the ability to work through some of the issues that this team has on the field is not present. And I'm interested to see how Pochettino works with that because that's not an easy fix. And there may not be a right answer for that. I I don't have an answer. I know you probably don't. And you, even if you think you do, you probably don't. Because if we had this magical answer, we could snap our fingers and we could go back to normal, destroying everybody in CONCACAF and hopefully competing against the rest of the world. But right now, we can't even compete against CONCACAF. So we have to think about how we get back to the fundamental basics of how our program came to exist and how it came to rise to the point it is right now. Moving on to another question from, again, Eric Schmitz, another co-host on the World CONCACAF. He asked, who should be more upset about that game? The players who were there or the players who weren't there? And I think the answer is they all should be upset about this. Every last player in the player pool should be upset at the performance and they should strive to do better. That's the easy answer. But it does take that answer to understand that a lot of the mistakes that are happening may not be due to tactics. It may not be due to coaching error or coaching decisions. It may just be because the player messed up. And we have to say that, and they have to say that more importantly, and take the steps necessary to fix it, hold each other accountable, and really get down to the root of the competition. That is, if I make a mistake, I'm going to fight like hell to make up for it. A mistake begets other mistakes, and then all of a sudden you have a pile of mistakes and nobody's willing to take accountability for any of them. And last night, that turned into 2 goals for Mexico. It's very simple. And we have to reconcile with the fact that some of these players have got to improve in the competition aspect of this game, the mental aspect of this game. We can't be pushed around. We can't be outworked. We can't be out hustled. But last night, many times we were. And for the people who stayed up, like me on the East Coast until almost 1 a.m. to watch that game, that's a disappointment. And it's even more disappointing that there are so many people who kind of figured this was going to happen and they decided not to watch it all. That should be even more scary for the team, for U.S. Soccer, for everybody. Fans who are dedicated to this team decided last night not to watch because they knew what the result was going to be because they have seen how this team has played over the last few months. That's upsetting. And that is what needs to change first and foremost. But that's the only answer I can give is these players got to be upset at everything that goes wrong. They have to take accountability for everything that goes wrong. The coaching staff needs to take the measures necessary to instill the competition in this group so that they can all become better. We said this before the camp. We hope that they can get better every single day and take that back to their clubs. And today we kind of have a stale taste in our mouth because it doesn't feel like that improvement came. Andres Isasa, who's one of my good friends, he said, understanding the altitude of Mexico, why do U.S. fans stay awake for this team? Well, dismissing the first part, the altitude is one thing, and you know how that affects play is obviously a little bit different. And Guadalajara is not as high as Mexico City, but I'll set that aside. Why do U.S. fans stay awake for this team? Why should they stay up until all hours of the night or wake up at god awful hours of the morning to watch this team? Because we care. That's the easy answer, and that's the real answer. Because we care. We give a damn about this team. And what we hope for is a team that will care as much as we do. We all have our different philosophies and theories about how we move this team forward and how we get them to improve to get to the point where we can be a true contender for the World Cup when it comes to our shores in 2 years. But we all have that care. We all have that commitment. And the players need to have that as well. The coaching staff needs to have that. The staff needs to have that. Everybody associated with this moment needs to have that. FIFA needs to have that. CONCACAF needs to have it. There's a lot of people who have their hands in this game that need to be committed to the progress of soccer in the United States, starting with our national teams, both the men and the women. The women feel like they're back on track and they're taking that accountability. They've righted their ship, and now it's time for the men to do the same. I don't know if that is going to be an overnight fix, but it better be because we have official competition coming in less than 3 weeks. And that is something where as they go back to their clubs, as they continue to push for minutes and push to improve and help their teams win, they need to also be thinking about how they bottle that and bring it back to the United States and to Jamaica when we go to face them next month. We'll leave it right there. We're going to talk a little bit more about that next up. We're facing Jamaica in the CONCACAF Nations League quarterfinals. We will discuss next month's window after this. Hey everyone, are you looking for the latest gear for your U.S. national teams, Major League Soccer, the NWSL, or any other team in the world of soccer? The USA Soccercast has affiliate partnerships that are ready to help you out. Head to linktree.com/USA Soccercast, where we have links to Homage, Fanatics, the MLS Store, and Breaking Team. You can get the jersey, shirt, hat, or accessory you're looking for to support your team, while also saving some money and helping this show in the process. Again, linktree.com/USA Soccercast. Click on the links and get your gear. And we thank you as always for your support of the show. We're back on the USA Soccercast, and we turn our attention to the November international window, which is the resumption, at least on the United States side, of the greatest tournament in my mind, CONCACAF Nations League. We're back. We're back in the quarterfinals. Yes, we got a bye, but that's how it's working for at least this last iteration before CONCACAF decides to do another change. But we now have an opponent. We now have dates for those matches. We will face Jamaica. Jamaica, who won Group B with 8 points over Honduras and Nicaragua, will face the United States. It will be a two-leg quarterfinal, November 14th, the first match. That will take place in Kingston at the office at Independence Park. And then 4 days later, on November 18th, at City Park in St. Louis, will be the second leg, the home leg for the United States. Now, this will be a tough battle. I don't think anyone's underestimating Jamaica. They did not lose in the group stage, 2 wins and 2 draws, though both draws were scoreless draws, including last night in their finale against Honduras. So they are beatable. But when we talk about facing Jamaica, you first start out by saying the office is notoriously tough to play. It's just a tough place to play. I love the office. It's one of my favorite stadiums in CONCACAF. It's one of my favorite stadiums in the world. When that atmosphere is kicking, the history behind it, it is amazing. And the United States are 3 wins, 1 loss, and 6 draws at the office in 10 previous matches. Now, you have to honestly be grateful that that game is first and that they don't have the reverse of what happened last year, which is where they went to Austin, they won 3-0 against Trinidad and Tobago, and then they went down to Trinidad and Tobago and lost. If it was a better team, that loss could have cost them a place in the semifinal. But this time around, they get to take care of the hard part first and then maybe come home and defend home turf where they're, again, very, very good in St. Louis. Jamaica is not who we thought we'd play because of the drop in the rankings and the CONCACAF rankings that we suffered in September. Now, that was confirmed this morning, which confirmed this matchup with Jamaica and U.S. Soccer, then announced the 2 dates. We already had the November 18th date at City Park, but they announced the away leg on November 14th at the office. 4 days between those 2 games. It will probably be a big difference in the temperature between those 2 towns. Of course, Kingston in the middle of the Caribbean is going to be 80 to 90 degrees, muggy, maybe rainy, humid. And then you go to City Park in St. Louis, and St. Louis probably be pretty cold by November 18th. In fact, if it's not cold, then global warming really is a thing, which we already know it is. So maybe there won't be that much of a difference. But I think, again, when we think about this competition, everyone around me, everyone that I talk to, everyone on the internet likes to say that CONCACAF Nations League is a waste of time. And it's not. Because to win a World Cup, to get to a World Cup, to get to a Gold Cup, you have to go through your confederation. Now, I didn't make the map 65 billion years ago. And I didn't put the United States 248 years ago. I didn't put them in Africa or put them in Europe. I didn't have that luxury. I was born just like you were in this United States. We're in North America with the rest of our confederation. And so we have to live with that. And we have to understand that everyone else in this confederation wants to beat us. And we have to match that energy. We have to match that intensity. It does not matter if we think that they are a lesser team. We have to respect the opponent. And when we don't respect the opponent, that's when you get 2-1 losses to Panama in Copa America. That's when you get 2-0 losses last night to Mexico. That's when you get 2-1 losses to Canada in Kansas City like we did in September. You have to respect your opponent. It does not matter that your opponent is not England or Germany or France or Argentina or Brazil. It does not matter. If we are facing St. Vincent and the Grenadines, place I love, we should beat them. And we should beat them soundly, and we should respect the fact that they are trying to beat us the same way we're trying to beat them and approach that game as such. These two games are going to be very difficult in that regard. Jamaica, if you remember, we last saw them in the semifinal. Why? Because they came back against Canada on the road in Toronto and beat them to knock them out of the quarterfinal. Jamaica does not care that they're playing us. They may not want to play us, but they're going to approach this game hoping to beat us and hoping to send a message to the rest of CONCACAF that when it comes to World Cup qualifying, they're the team to beat. Yes, we don't have to qualify for the World Cup, but Jamaica sees this grand opportunity and grand stage, and we need to meet that intensity head on. That starts with a trip to the office. It then continues in St. Louis, and hopefully we are able to turn this around and get back to the Nations League finals, because we've never lost a Nations League competition ever. There's been 3 of these. We are the only team that have our fingerprints on the trophy, and damn it, I want it to stay that way. It's my favorite competition. I want this so badly, and I hope you guys out there understand why this is important. It's CONCACAF. CONCACAF is an important region. It is our region, and we need to dominate it. If we need to even think about the consideration that we should be going up against the other best in the world and competing with them. It starts here at home. We can't sit there and say we want to be the best team in Asia or the best team in Europe or beating the best teams in Africa when we can't even approach that kind of mentality with the people we have here at home in our own region. If you don't face Honduras and El Salvador and Nicaragua with the same intensity as you do Germany, France, and England, then you're not in this soccer game for the right reason. That is how I see it. Of course, this is my platform. I'm able to say that, and people are able to disagree with me. But at the end of the day, CONCACAF is important. Yes, we need to be trying to play some of the other best teams in the world, but we have to take care of business at home before we can think about any glory beyond the Gold Cup and beyond the CONCACAF Nations League. Start here by dispatching Jamaica and send a message to the rest of the world that, hey, we have got our stuff together. But we have to win these 2 games, because otherwise, if we don't, the Gold Cup, yeah, we might be qualified for it, but that is the last competition that we will see until the World Cup. We want to add this other trophy to our case, and we want to keep it in our trophy case. To do that, we have to defend our title. And we have to understand that we are getting Jamaica's best shot, no matter what. So we will leave it there. Next month is going to be an interesting month. Again, we get to go to the office. We get to go to St. Louis. I hope to see a lot of you there. But that will do it for episode 143 of the USA Soccer Cast. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to follow us on Twitter, and we are on YouTube as well. Find us on both at USA Soccer Cast. Subscribe, rate, and review our episodes. It really helps, and it is greatly appreciated. Don't forget, we have affiliate programs with a ton of places to get you the gear you love and to help you travel to see your favorite teams play or watch them from your home. Head to our Linktree, linktree.com/USA Soccercast to learn more. Click the links to all of these sites and support the show in the process. We'll talk to you again soon, y'all. Peace.